Hello, friends. Welcome into Falcons Today. The cooler Tom Downey here to discuss some free agent offensive line targets for the Atlanta Falcons, as that position group is maybe not in the best shape overall, and that maybe isn't a huge surprise either. I've got five names we're going to break down. Before that, though, do you think the Falcons need to sign an offensive lineman? Type in Y for yes or N for no and sound off for me in the comments section. Overall, it's not a great grouping. The PFF rankings from last year's starters-ish. We didn't feel like doing Jalen Mayfield that dirty, who we'll spend some more time on in a little bit. Jake Matthews is fine as your left tackle. I'm not worried about that spot. Matt Hennessy or Drew Dahlman, more on those guys in a little bit, I'm not worried about. Chris Lindstrom is a good football player. He is fine as your right guard. It is the massive uncertainty at left guard with Elijah Wilkinson and Caleb McGarry as right tackle, who it's a little bit dicey. The number, of course, is where they ranked out of the qualifying players at that position. So checks in around 83 for tackles and 82 for guards. There are some, of course, non-qualifying players who didn't play enough from that perspective. PFF last year ranked the Falcons' offensive line 28th in the NFL. And their big moves of the offseason to make it better was, I guess, to bring in Elijah Wilkinson. Now, we mentioned Drew Dahlman. He could start over Matt Hennessy. That is a very real possibility for Atlanta. That is a battle, but either way, I feel good about that position. Jermaine Ifedi at right tackle backup. He ain't good. I don't know if he's any better than Caleb McGarry. He was a low-end starter, I think, at best. I'm fine with Jake Matthews. They drafted Jalen Mayfield out of Michigan last year in the previous draft, the one before that, and Elijah Wilkinson, who I don't think is any great player, is a former career backup, basically. He's working over Mayfield. Now, maybe Justin Schaefer, the former Georgia Bulldog, mid-ish round pick, can emerge, but I have no confidence in left guard, and I'm worried about right tackle. Now, that's me maybe raising too much of a red flag. So we'll leave it up to you, the people. What is your concern level right now over the offensive line? Scale this for me 1 to 10. 1 being you're barely worried at all. You ain't raising any red flags at this point. 10 being you're kind of freaking out. And you are freaking out. You're in meltdown mode. This will be the pinned comments on today's show. So if an ad break happens to come here on YouTube, take advantage of it. Head down there, scale it from 1 to 10, your concern level over the offensive line. Let's break down some targets. First up, guard Quinton Spain, who I am a bit surprised remains unsigned in NFL free agency. This is a former longtime starter, a proven veteran who's shown he can at least be a viable stopgap option for you on the offensive line. Oh, by the way, there's connections to Arthur Smith. The Titans overlap, right? 2015, 2018 for Quinton Spain. He spent a long time there with a mostly starting role for the organization. Missed some time in his first year, but has basically been a starter. He bounced around in 2020 between a couple different teams for several years. Now, I know Arthur Smith was the tight ends coach in Tennessee, and he and Spain left before Smith took over as the OC, but they were there together the entire time. Like Smith and Spain's time in Tennessee, direct overlap. Last year for the Bengals, he wasn't great. But again, you're talking about a roughly league average offensive guard, 43 out of 82. Not ideal, but, you're starting 60. There were only a couple of other guards, 64, a couple of guards who even qualified from that standpoint there. I think Spain would be an instant upgrade over Elijah Wilkinson, who I know he's been a camp winner and whatnot because of he's out there playing, but Wilkinson is not somebody I really trust. Former Denver Bronco, hasn't played that much. He was with the Bears briefly and then didn't do anything last year. I guess that's the Ryan Pace-isms coming through for the Falcons organization. I don't want to start him at guard. I don't trust him at the position. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think there are better options in free agency. Beyond Spain, there's also Ereck Flowers, a reliable-ish. And I'll emphasis on ish because it is August, so not everyone's super reliable there. I know you know him from his time with the Giants. He sucked. He was a bust at tackle. He's kind of saved his career, though, at guard. The Commanders cut him, and he's had little interest since then. Flowers is not going to be your long-term left guard, but as a stopgap, I would feel better with both, or either, I should say, Ereck Flowers or Quinton Spain over Wilkinson, and certainly over Jalen Mayfield, I guess, is now the backup left tackle for this team. What I'm saying is the Falcons need to bring in some competition. I know you've got Justin Schaefer, the young guy, but I would like to see what I have in Marcus Mariota and or Desmond Ridder at quarterback. And having a better offensive line really helps me evaluate that quarterback play, which is going to be uncertain for what I think is going to be a not great team this season. Now, if you're not giving up on the Falcons after, let's call it what it was, a pretty rough and disappointing offseason in terms of you lose Matt Ryan, you're rebuilding now, join the Bird Gang by hitting that big red button and subscribe. That way you don't miss out on any of our Falcons videos right here at Chat Sports. Fun name, Oday Aboushi. Next up here, the former Chargers offensive lineman. He's mostly been a backup, but when he's played, he's made the occasional splash, and by splash I mean he hasn't looked like a complete disaster, which is maybe the baseline for competent offensive line play. Didn't qualify last year, did actually grade out pretty decently in 5 games and under 250 snaps, I think, for the Chargers. Decent name to at least consider as a backup option for the Falcons. I would prefer the first 2 names, but he's the third guard here that I have on this list in the end. Let's talk some tackles now, if you really want to bench Caleb McGarry. First up, Eric Fisher. And I am surprised that Fisher's unsigned. He's played left tackle and right tackle, and for the Falcons, he'd be a right tackle. I know McGarry was a first-round pick, and you don't want to bail on first-round picks too early. He hasn't been that good. I don't think he's it at right tackle. And I wouldn't mind some more veteran presence on the offensive line. I think that Fisher could bring that. More on Fisher coming up, but first, random question of the day. Name a random Falcons offensive line. It can be either current or if you want to get wild and wacky with it, it can be a past one. Drop that name for me in the comments section. Fisher wasn't as good in 2021 as he was in 2020 with the Chiefs. Now, we could maybe blame the quarterback. Mahomes to Wentz is a pretty big drop-off there. He also allowed a lot more sacks on fewer snaps. I think there is some concern that the regression is real for Eric Fisher. That's a big-time red flag, I think. But I am surprised that he hasn't been at this point. That's interesting to me. I wonder if he's holding out, A, for more money, or B, to sign with a contending team. Fisher did that with the Colts. If we're being honest about where the Falcons sit, we cannot consider them a true contender at this point. One more offensive line name here, Bobby Massie. I was a bit surprised that Cam Fleming was the one re-signed by the Broncos, not Massie. There is the Ryan Pace connection, which apparently matters for this team now. Whatever. He played from 2016 to 2020 with the Chicago Bears. Here are the PFF numbers. Everything's in favor of Bobby Massie. Better overall grade. Of course, leads to a higher rank among offensive tackles. Fewer snaps, fewer sacks, fewer penalties, even balancing for the sacks. Everything favors Bobby Massie from that standpoint. So my guess is McGarry's going to get another chance to show he can be the guy since he was a first-round pick, despite the fifth-year option being declined. The guards, though, I would strongly consider pursuing if I were the Falcons. That was my 5-man list. I want to hear from you guys now. Name a player, or if you're an awesome overachiever, players you think the Falcons should go sign. And by the way, if you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed. Hit that big red button and join us for more free Falcons videos right here at Falcons Today.